Okay, let's unpack this. Do you ever get that feeling like you're dragging something really heavy behind you?
Mm.
Not, a literal weight, obviously, but that undeniable burden of the past?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
Maybe it's the sting of something someone did, something that really hurt,
Yeah.
a betrayal or just a misunderstanding that kind of sticks around.
Or maybe even more often, right? It's that crushing feeling about something you did.
Exactly. That guilt or shame, a mistake you just can't seem to shake off. You replay it, wishing you could just, I don't know, hit rewind and change it all.
That pain from being hurt and the guilt or shame from hurting others. It's incredibly common. So many people feel that.
It really is like this heavy trunk, just overflowing with regrets and what ifs that you feel like you're lugging around constantly.
Right. You just can't seem to put it down.
So today, this deep dive is all about exploring that feeling. We want to understand why it clings so tightly and, crucially, find a path to finally releasing it based on all this material you've shared.
That feeling of being weighed down, it's incredibly real. And it keeps so many people feeling stuck, unable to fully move forward with their lives.
Yeah.
So this deep dive, we're focusing specifically on learning how to forgive yourself. The ultimate goal here is releasing that burden, that weight of the past, so you can actually experience a real sense of freedom.
Freedom, like psychological, emotional, maybe even physical freedom.
Absolutely. Freedom from all that tension and stress that holding on to this stuff creates. It manifests physically too.
Okay. And you've given us a stack of really fascinating material here. It covers, well, a whole range of perspectives. We've got psychological approaches, insights from mindfulness practices.
Yeah, philosophical viewpoints too, like Stoicism came up, and some incredibly honest, very relatable personal experiences that people shared.
It's quite a rich collection to draw from.
It really is. So our mission today really is to go through all of it, try and pull out the most important, the most actionable insights.
Right.
We want to truly understand what self-forgiveness is based on this material, why it's so vital for well-being, what, specifically gets in the way for so many people.
And then the practical side.
Exactly. And then lay out some tangible, practical ways that you, listening, can maybe begin practicing it in your own life. We're drawing directly from the strategies presented in these sources you gathered.
Okay, great. So let's start by looking closer at that heavy backpack you might be carrying. Because, wow, struggling to forgive ourselves, it feels almost universal, doesn't it?
It really does.
There's this weird paradox. I mean, you can look at a friend, right? See them make a mistake. Maybe they say something awkward or forget something.
Yeah, something minor sometimes.
Yeah. And we can so readily offer them grace. We say, hey, it's okay. Everyone messes up. Don't be so hard on yourself.
But then, flip it around. When it's us.
Oh, it's a completely different standard. That internal critic just goes into overdrive.
It's incredibly harsh, yeah. We can hold on to things for years, sometimes decades. Things that we would just waved away in a friend in like 5 minutes.
So why? Why is it so incredibly difficult to turn that same understanding, that kindness, inward?
Well, looking through the material you shared, the reasons for this struggle seem to have some pretty deep roots.
Yeah, it looks that way.
They absolutely do. A significant part, it seems, stems from these deeply ingrained beliefs we carry around. Beliefs about our own worthiness, maybe?
Like feeling you deserve to feel bad.
Exactly. Or that feeling that you have to be punished somehow. Then there's the immense pressure of perfectionism, that belief that any mistake is just a catastrophic, unforgivable failure.
Right.
And often there's this core fear, this worry that forgiving ourselves means we're saying what happened was okay, that we're, letting ourselves off the hook or somehow condoning the action.
And the material is just crystal clear on this point. Self-forgiveness is absolutely not about condoning or excusing what happened.
That's such a crucial distinction. It comes up again and again in these sources. We'll dig into what it is in a bit. But it's so important to name that fear and kind of debunk it right from the start.
Yeah.
Forgiving yourself isn't forgetting. It's not pretending it didn't hurt or that it wasn't wrong or didn't have consequences.
Okay. So if we hold on to that fear, that self-criticism, that refusal to forgive, maybe because we think it keeps us safe or responsible in some way, what's the actual cost? Because the sources paint a pretty stark picture. It doesn't sound protective at all.
No, not at all. They use this powerful, maybe slightly unsettling analogy.
Which was that?
Holding on to guilt and shame is like drinking poison yourself.
Right.
and expecting the other person involved, or maybe the past version of yourself you're mad at, to get sick from it.
Wow. Yeah, that puts it bluntly.
It really does. It doesn't punish the past.
Yeah.
It doesn't punish the other person.
Mm-hmm.
It actively eats away at you right here, right now, in the present.
And how does that show up? What does that eating away look like?
Well, it fosters these persistent states of anxiety, depression, and often this really deeply entrenched low self-esteem.
That constant internal attack.
Yeah, that voice telling you you're bad, you're unworthy. It actively prevents you from actually learning from your mistakes, which ironic, right?
Definitely.
And maybe most importantly, it prevents you from moving forward into a healthier future.
It keeps you stuck.
Completely stuck.
Yeah.
Think of it like trying to drive your car through life, but you've got the emergency brake pulled up the whole way.
Right. You're pressing the gas, trying to go.
Exactly. You're burning energy, making noise, maybe inching forward a tiny bit, but you're constantly fighting this huge resistance. You can never really pick up speed or reach your full potential because you're fundamentally holding yourself back.
Wow.
It just keeps you stuck in these exhausting cycles. Negative thinking, self-criticism, round and round.
And the research you included, the psychological review, it backs this up quite strongly, doesn't it?
Unequivocally. Yeah. A persistent lack of self-forgiveness is strongly correlated with higher levels of what psychologists call neuroticism.
Which is basically?
In simple terms, it's a tendency to experience negative emotions, anxiety, worry, irritability more intensely and more often than average.
Okay.
It's also linked to greater anger and significantly lower overall life satisfaction, lower subjective well-being, which is just, how happy and content you feel with your life overall.
So it really impacts your day-to-day quality of life.
Hugely. And that constant internal conflict, it can manifest in very real ways. Sometimes it's conscious self-sabotage where you actively undermine yourself.
Right.
But often it's subconscious. Patterns of thinking or acting that just prevent you from achieving goals, and you might not even fully realize why it keeps happening.
And it leads to feeling isolated too, doesn't it? Especially shame.
Oh, absolutely. Shame is particularly insidious here. Yeah. The sources describe shame not just as a feeling, but almost like a secret you have to guard. Yeah, something you bury deep inside because it makes you feel fundamentally flawed, demeaned, undeserving, lacking at your very core. Like there's something inherently wrong with you.
Not just what you did, but who you are.
Precisely. And because that feeling of being unworthy hits right at the heart of who you believe you are, it's incredibly hard to talk about. You don't want anyone to see this perceived fundamental flaw.
Which is why it's so isolating.
Exactly. You feel like your core self is bad, maybe undeserving of connection, so you withdraw. You start comparing yourself negatively to others, feeling not good enough professionally, personally, socially.
And that feeling makes it almost impossible to fix things, doesn't it? Because the focus isn't on changing a behavior, it's on feeling like you're fundamentally broken.
Right. How do you fix something that feels like it's inherently wrong with your very being? It's paralyzing.
That distinction you mentioned earlier between guilt and shame, the Stanford material you included really highlighted that as critical. It's worth pausing on that for a moment.
Absolutely. They feel similar, but they function so differently. Guilt, as described in the sources, is more about regret over a specific behavior.
Okay, like I did a bad thing.
Pretty much. I regret snapping at that person, or I feel bad I forgot that important meeting. Guilt in this sense can actually be, well, constructive.
Constructive? How so?
It's painful, sure, but it's functional. It can motivate you to make amends, maybe apologize, learn from it, and then be more mindful next time.
So guilt is like your conscience giving you a nudge. Hey, that action wasn't great. Let's try differently.
Exactly. It's focused outward on the action and its consequences. Shame, though, turns inward. It's not, I did something bad. It's, I am bad because I did that thing.
Okay. I am a bad person because I snapped. Or I am incompetent because I forgot.
Precisely. It attaches to your identity.
And because it feels so personal, so fundamental, you keep it secret.
Right. You hide it. You don't want anyone to know you feel this deeply flawed. It's that fear if people really knew me, the real flawed me, they wouldn't accept me.
Which just feeds that isolation cycle we talked about.
Totally. And that isolation, that chronic shame, the CFT source you provided points out, can have significant tolls even on physical health. It can increase mortality risk, similar to things like smoking or obesity.
Wow. Linking it directly to physical health and mortality, that really drives home how toxic shame is compared to maybe the constructive side of guilt.
It really underscores that these aren't just fleeting feelings you can ignore. They are powerful psychological and physiological states. They have real-world impacts.
Okay.
And these feelings, guilt and shame, they're obviously tied directly to the past, aren't they? Both the pain we felt when others hurt us and the guilt or shame about harm we caused.
Right.
The sources are very clear. The past happened. You can't rewind the clock. But,
Yeah.
and this is the crucial bit, the emotional response to that past. That's where the potential for healing lies. That's what self-forgiveness actually aims to transform.
Which brings us nicely into section 2, shifting the lens. If self-forgiveness isn't about condoning or forgetting, and we've established that clearly, what is it then, really, based on these insights?
Well, it's definitely not pretending it didn't happen.
Yeah.
The Dr. Puff material, the Reddit thread insights,
Yeah.
they're very clear on that.
I was really struck by one definition of forgiveness in that Reddit thread. It said something like, forgiveness doesn't mean you're saying what happened was okay.
Right.
It just means you're letting go of the hopeless wish that things could have gone differently.
That phrasing, the hopeless wish that things could have gone differently, that's incredibly powerful, isn't it?
It really landed for me.
Because you can wish it, regret it, agonize over it forever, but the past event, it's a fixed point in time. It happened. And until you can truly accept that fact that it happened, that moment is done. You cannot truly move on from its emotional fallout.
That makes so much sense. Otherwise, you're just pouring energy into a fantasy, right? A parallel universe where it didn't happen, instead of dealing with the reality of this one.
Exactly. And that acceptance, that's a core component. The sources outline several key ingredients, really, that make up genuine self-forgiveness. First, and maybe this sounds a bit counterintuitive, is actually acknowledging the mistake.
So not burying it, but looking at it.
Yes, taking an honest, clear-eyed look at what happened and your role in it. Not to beat yourself up, but for truthful reflection.
Like, okay, facts on the table. What did I actually do? What were the results?
Precisely. And then flowing from that is taking responsibility, owning your part.
My part, specifically.
Yes. The material emphasizes this. Doesn't mean taking all the blame, especially if others were involved, but it does mean clearly identifying and owning your piece of it.
And this isn't supposed to feel heavier. It's presented as a step towards lightness.
Absolutely. The psychological review and the Dr. Puff material really highlight this. Taking responsibility is fundamentally empowering.
Empowering. How so?
Well, think about it. If you don't own your part, you have no agency to make a different choice next time. If it was all someone else's fault or just bad luck, then you're powerless, right? But if you could say, okay, I did this or I contributed in this way, then you gain the power to say, okay, I can learn from this. I can choose differently in the future. It gives you control back.
Okay, so acknowledging what happened, taking responsibility for your part, and then, like you said, accepting it happened, letting go of that wish it were different.
Yes. And that letting go, it's an active, conscious decision. It's about intentionally releasing the emotional grip the past event has on your present state. It's choosing to stop letting regret or guilt or shame consume your energy and dictate how you feel right now.
And the last piece seems to be about growth.
Yes. Embedded within true self-forgiveness is recognizing your inherent capacity for growth. Understanding that a past mistake, no matter how painful, doesn't define your entire being forever. You're capable of learning, changing, becoming a better version of yourself.
Which leads us perfectly into section 3, the upside. Because if all that sounds like, well, a lot of difficult internal work, acknowledging, taking responsibility, accepting, releasing the payoff according to these sources is huge.
It's immense. The transformative power, the benefits, that's the whole point of embarking on this journey.
It sounds like it's not just about feeling a little bit better, but about unlocking something much, much bigger.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The sources frame self-forgiveness not as some kind of luxury or just a nice-to-have thing. They frame it as absolutely essential for fundamental mental and emotional well-being.
Essential.
Yes, it is at its core a powerful and necessary act of self-love, of self-care.
And the number one benefit seems to be liberation, freedom.
Precisely. Releasing that heavy backpack, that burden of the past, it literally frees up your energy, your attention. It allows you to step out from the shadows of regret and shame and actually fully inhabit the present moment.
More space.
Exactly. With less weight holding you down, you have more capacity for hope, a clearer sense of purpose for your future. As that person on the Reddit thread put it so well, the more you heal and learn, the less darkness weighs on you and the freer you will be.
And the specific psychological and emotional benefits are pretty extensive too, according to the research you pulled together.
Oh, yeah. We're talking improved psychological health overall, significantly greater life satisfaction, a real boost in self-esteem because you're not constantly tearing yourself down anymore,
Makes sense.
increased emotional stability, and improved perceived quality of life.
Yeah.
Basically, you just feel better about living your life.
And it directly tackles things like anxiety and depression.
Yes, being intentionally kind to yourself, as the Stanford source highlights, actively counteracts and reduces those states. You're literally training your brain, your emotional system, to move away from that threat response and towards safety and connection. It helps break free from those repetitive negative thought loops that keep you captive.
And this freedom isn't just internal, right? It fuels outward potential too.
Definitely. It opens the door to genuine personal growth, positive transformation in your actual life.
How does it do that?
Well, the material strongly links self-forgiveness and its close cousin, self-compassion, to increased motivation towards self-improvement goals.
Okay, explain that connection.
Think about it. If you're constantly beating yourself up for past failures, you're going to be pretty hesitant to try anything new or challenging, right? For fear of messing up again.
Yeah, you'd be risk averse.
Totally. But if you can forgive past mistakes, treat yourself with some kindness and understanding, when you stumble, you're much more likely to feel motivated to learn, to grow, to set new goals and actually work towards them. You shift from being paralyzed by self-criticism to being energized by the possibility of becoming better.
And that can lead to real-world results.
Yeah, tangible outcomes. Things like improved focus, better concentration, because your mind isn't constantly stuck replaying the past, potentially higher levels of success and productivity in whatever you pursue. You feel empowered to make choices aligned with the person you want to be, not held back by the ghost of who you were or what you did.
And it affects relationships too.
Profoundly. Beyond the individual benefits, it really impacts your relationships with other people. When you can offer yourself forgiveness and compassion, you become inherently more capable of extending that same understanding, that same grace to others.
So it makes you more forgiving generally.
Yeah. It fosters healthier relationships, deeper connections. It contributes to creating a more compassionate world around you, starting with yourself. The psychological review mentioned that more self-forgiving individuals tend to have more fulfilling, more positive interactions with others.
That makes complete sense. If you're not drowning in your own shame and guilt, you're just more available, less reactive, more present for people.
Absolutely, well put. Ultimately, releasing that burden of self-blame isn't just about taking away something negative. It's about creating vital space, emotional space, psychological space.
Just for what?
Space that was previously choked with judgment, regret, fear. It's now open for something positive. Space for joy, space for peace, space for authentic connection, both with yourself and with the people who truly matter to you.
Okay, so we've dug into the problem, the heavyweight, the cost. We've clarified what self-forgiveness actually is and isn't. And we've looked at the incredible freedom and potential it unlocks. Now, the crucial part, the how. How do we actually do this? Which brings us to section 4, laying down the burden. Practical steps, actionable approaches drawn from the material you provided.
Right, and the good news is the sources you included offer some very concrete pathways here.
Uh-huh.
A core idea, though, that runs through pretty much all of them, the Reddit thread, the Stoicism insights, the psychological stuff, is that the foundation, the prerequisite for all of this is acceptance.
Acceptance that you did what you did, or that thing happened, with the knowledge, the experience, the perspective, the emotional state you had at that specific time.
Yes. This is huge. You couldn't possibly have acted back then with the understanding, the wisdom, the maturity, or the information that you have right now.
It seems obvious when you say it like that, but...
But we do it all the time, right? Judge our past selves by our present standards. It's absurd, logically, but emotionally, it's a common trap.
Yeah.
Recognizing this truth that in that moment, you made the decision you made or reacted how you reacted.
Yeah.
Because with the limited resources you had then, it seemed like the best or the only, or at least the most understandable choice, that realization is absolutely foundational. It helps make forgiveness feel possible.
The Stoic perspective really hammered this home too, didn't it?
It did. The past is immutable, unchangeable. You can only learn from it. And that learning changes your future choices. So treat the past event like an administrative fact.
An administrative fact. I like that.
Yeah. A data point you learned from, not an emotional brand that defines who you are today. It helps drain that intense emotional charge.
Okay, so acceptance is the bedrock. Then what? What are the specific techniques?
Well, Building on that, one very structured approach comes from the mindfulness material, detailed by Rana Kabasnik. It's designed as a daily practice.
Really?
Specifically for forgiving your own imperfections, your past actions.
Walk us through it. How does it work?
Okay, first step, make a list. Actually write down the specific things you find hardest to forgive yourself for. Get them out of your head onto paper.
So, concrete things. I regret how I handled X, or I feel bad about Y.
Exactly. Specific actions, patterns you hold guilt or shame about. Then, once you have your list, find a quiet, comfortable place. Sit down, somewhere you won't be disturbed. Take a moment to just settle yourself. And here's where the key phrase comes in. For each item on your list, you repeat this phrase, either quietly to yourself or even out loud. To the extent that I am able, I forgive myself for any hurt or harm I have caused myself, intentionally or unintentionally.
To the extent that I am able, I like that phrasing. It acknowledges it might not be 100% right away.
Exactly. It's realistic. It meets you where you are. The article suggests starting with the smaller stuff first, the easier to forgive items.
Like what?
Maybe, I forgive myself for procrastinating yesterday, or I forgive myself for not getting enough exercise this week. You build the forgiveness muscle on the smaller things.
Okay, start small, build momentum.
Right. Then gradually, you work your way up to the bigger, more challenging issues, the deeper regrets. Maybe even forgiving yourself for, quote, the habit of beating myself up for not being perfect.
And there are some reinforcing phrases, too.
Yes, and these are important. They acknowledge the difficulty and commit you to the process. You add, even if I can't forgive myself, I forgive myself for that.
Wow, that's meta-forgiveness. Forgiving yourself for not being able to forgive yourself yet.
Exactly. And then, for as long as it takes, I will continue to offer myself the priceless gift of forgiveness. That, for as long as it takes, part is crucial. It sets that realistic expectation. This is a journey, not an event.
Okay, that's a really concrete practice. What else?
Another structured approach, complementing this, comes from the Stanford material. It's a 4-step process, heavily influenced by self-compassion research. The whole frame is, treat yourself like you would treat a good friend who messed up.
Okay, I like that frame. What are the steps?
It involves mind, body, heart, and action. Step 1 is practice awareness. Tune into the discomfort, the guilt, the shame when you think about the past event. But crucially, do it without immediately judging yourself for feeling it. Just notice the feeling.
Okay, notice without judgment.
And ask yourself honestly, am I realistically assessing the impact here? Or am I catastrophizing? Am I blowing this way out of proportion in my head?
Which the inner critic loves to do.
Oh, absolutely. So, awareness first, notice the feeling, check the proportionality. Step 2 is remember shared humanity. This is key for breaking that isolation of shame.
Oh.
It's actively reminding yourself, connecting to the understanding that making mistakes, failing, falling short, this is not some unique personal flaw. It is part of the universal human experience. Everyone messes up. Everyone learns through trial and error.
Right, like that analogy you used, the baby learning to walk. They fall, they cry maybe, but they don't conclude they're fundamentally bad walkers.
Exactly. They get back up. Self-forgiving adults approach their mistakes with that same spirit, ideally. Understanding vulnerability and failure are part of learning, not proof of worthlessness.
Okay, so awareness, shared humanity. What's step 3?
Step 3 is being kind to yourself. This is where you actively soothe the discomfort you noticed in step 1. You ask yourself right in that moment of pain, what do I need right now to offer myself some kindness, some comfort?
And what might that look like, practically?
It could be lots of things. Maybe placing a hand over your heart, taking a few deep breaths, maybe saying a kind phrase internally like, this is really hard right now, but I'm here for myself. Maybe stepping away to make a cup of tea or go for a quick walk outside.
So an active practice of self-care in response to the pain.
Yes. It's about taking one small step towards offering yourself that kindness and forgiveness in that moment.
Okay, and the last step, step 4.
Step 4 is take action. This moves things into the external world, if that's possible and appropriate. Meaning, if you can do something to rectify the mistake or make amends to someone you harmed, doing so with honor and self-respect is step 4. The Stanford source emphasizes that taking this practical step when it comes from responsibility, not self-punishment, can significantly help lift that emotional burden.
Because you're actively addressing the consequences, showing yourself you can act differently now.
Precisely. And these steps really align with principles from compassion-focused therapy, or CFT, which came up in the True North psychology source you shared.
Right, CFT talks about developing an inner ally to counteract the harsh inner critic.
That's a core concept in CFT, yeah. The idea is that many of us have a highly developed threat system, always scanning for danger, including internal danger like self-criticism or shame,
Okay.
and often a relatively underdeveloped soothing system, which is linked to feelings of safety, calm, connection, contentment. CFT suggests we can actively retrain our brain
Retrain it how?
by strengthening that soothing system, by intentionally building a compassionate inner voice, that inner ally.
So consciously shifting energy from the judging part of the brain to the comforting part.
Exactly. Learning to relate to ourselves with the kind of wisdom, strength, and warmth that, say, a really wise, caring parent or a truly supportive friend would offer. It's actively cultivating this internal figure.
And how do you do that? What are the practices?
CFT suggests things like supportive self-talk, consciously catching negative thoughts and challenging them with kinder, more balanced perspectives. Writing compassionate letters to yourself, expressing understanding and support. You don't even have to keep them. The act of writing is powerful.
Okay.
Practicing loving kindness meditation, where you intentionally direct feelings of warmth and kindness inward. Or even using soothing touch, like placing a hand on your heart or giving yourself a gentle hug. These aren't just fluffy ideas. They're intentional actions designed to activate those calming, connecting neural pathways.
So it's an active practice, building that inner ally muscle.
Absolutely. Intentionally reinforcing a kinder way of relating to yourself. Over time, this weakens the grip of that inner critic, and the benefits are well documented. Better self-esteem, less anxiety and shame, and, like we said, more motivation for growth because you're less afraid of messing up.
Okay, so those are some structured approaches. What about other strategies mentioned in the sources? Journaling came up again.
Yeah. Writing about feelings, mistakes, even pain caused by others. It can be incredibly cathartic. It brings the tangled stuff out of the shadows into the light where you can look at it more objectively.
Like writing a letter.
Yes, that idea came up strongly. Writing a letter, expressing everything maybe to the person harmed, the person who harmed you, or even just to yourself.
And then destroying it, maybe.
That was one powerful perspective shared, yeah. That the healing came from the act of writing, of externalizing the pain, not necessarily from sending it or getting a response. The value was in the personal processing.
Mm-hmm.
The sources also wisely note, though, that journaling might not answer why someone else hurt you. That's often about their issues, not something you could figure out just by writing about your own feelings.
Right. Separating their stuff from your healing.
Exactly. Lifestyle and environment came up, too. Being mindful of what you consume, media, food, social interactions. Choosing supportive environments and people. Building daily self-care practices, meditation, movement, journaling, creates a foundation for this tough emotional work.
And confronting the past situation. Not dwelling, but looking honestly.
Yes, but with a specific goal. Extract the lesson. Understand what happened, your part, what you learned, and then consciously choose to treat that memory as that administrative fact, something you learned from, not an emotional identity marker that defines you forever.
Which ties back to that Stoic idea again. Focus on what you can control.
Precisely. You can't change the past. Your energy is best spent on your present reaction and how you use the lessons to shape your future.
And taking positive action now.
Yes. Putting energy into constructive actions now is a powerful form of self-forgiveness and growth. Making amends, if appropriate, sure, but also simply being intentionally kind and compassionate towards others from now on. Living in alignment with your current values.
Like the volunteering example.
Exactly. That came up in the Reddit thread as a powerful way to rebuild confidence, connect with positive people, and contribute positively now. It shifts the focus outward constructively.
It makes sense. Positive outward action influencing the internal state.
It really can. And of course, seeking support is highlighted as crucial, especially if you're dealing with really deep guilt, shame, trauma, or related anxiety or depression.
Therapy. Support groups.
Yes. Therapy, like CFT, EMDR, hypnotherapy were mentioned. A therapist can model compassion, guide practices, support groups, talking with trusted friends or partners. Anything that breaks that isolation shame thrives on.
And what about handling those persistent negative thought loops? The rumination.
There was a really interesting insight on this in the Reddit material, suggesting that dwelling can become almost like an addiction to the anxiety or depression it causes.
An addiction, that's a strong word.
Yeah, but maybe relatable. You get used to that painful feeling state. Their strategy was to actively choose a different discomfort, like physical activity. When the negative loop starts while you're running, say, you accept the thought is there, don't fight it, but consciously shift focus to your breath, your steps, the environment.
So choosing the temporary physical discomfort over the corrosive emotional pain and using the activity to practice letting the thought just pass by.
Exactly. It takes practice, intentionality, but it's an active way to interrupt those loops. Which brings us to section 5, navigating the bumps. Recognizing this is a process, it takes time, there will be challenges.
Yeah, because it's definitely not a one and done thing, is it? Say the magic words and poof, you're free. The sources are really clear. Self-forgiveness is a skill you develop. It takes time, patience, consistent practice. That phrase, for as long as it takes, really resonates here.
Absolutely. It won't happen instantly, especially if self-criticism is a deeply ingrained habit or if there's past trauma involved. The CFT material reminds us sometimes that threat system is just highly developed, and retraining the brain takes real effort and time.
And while we're focused on self-forgiveness, it's hard to ignore that sometimes the burden involves pain caused by others.
True. The sources touch on this complexity that forgiving others is often intertwined with this journey of healing yourself.
And that has its own challenges.
Definitely. The Reddit discussions highlighted the difficulty when others hurt you, especially intentionally. A key insight there was understanding that often others' hurtful behavior stems from their own issues, their immaturity, their own pain, their inability to handle feelings.
So trying not to take it so personally.
Exactly. Recognizing their behavior is often about them, not a reflection of your inherent worthiness. It doesn't excuse their actions, but it can shift your perspective and lessen the personal sting.
And setting boundaries is key there, too.
Absolutely essential. Forgiveness doesn't mean you have to tolerate ongoing harm. It's an internal process, but it often needs external boundaries to protect your healing.
What about wanting justice? That feeling of wanting karma to sort things out.
That's a very natural human feeling.
Hey.
But the sources suggest holding on to that anger, that intense desire for external justice or retribution, ultimately just feeds fear and keeps you stuck. It limits your life now.
So focusing on external justice actually blocks internal healing.
That's the implication. Your healing comes from your own internal work, your choices now, not from what happens to the person who hurt you. And another challenge mentioned, particularly in the Stanford material, is setting realistic expectations for ourselves.
Right. We hold ourselves to these impossible standards.
Which, as we said, is a root cause of struggling to forgive. Sometimes a huge part of self-compassion is simply accepting you're human, you will make mistakes, and aiming for good enough isn't failure. It's wisdom. It's self-kindness. It reduces the fuel for unnecessary guilt and shame.
Okay. But despite all these challenges, the overall message from the material seems really hopeful.
Overwhelmingly so. Yes. A key takeaway is that strong reassurance. It does get better. With time, with consistent effort. The weight doesn't vanish overnight, but it absolutely lessens. The grip of the past weakens. And that confidence, that sense of self-worth that got eroded, it can and does return as you practice self-forgiveness and self-compassion.
So let's try and wrap this up. To recap this deep dive, based on the material you provided, learning to forgive yourself isn't about being weak or saying what happened was okay or forgetting. It's this courageous act of acknowledging reality, accepting the past as past, taking responsibility for your part, and consciously choosing to release that heavy emotional burden that's weighing down your present.
Right. It's not a luxury. It's presented as essential for your psychological, your emotional well-being. It unlocks this incredible freedom from the past, creating crucial space inside you, space for growth, for joy, for peace, for better connections with yourself and others.
And crucially, it's not just an idea, it's a skill. Something you can learn and actively practice using all these different approaches we explored: mindfulness, the Stanford steps, building that inner ally with CFT ideas, journaling, taking action, getting support when you need it.
And remembering always that this is a process. It's a journey, step by step, day by day. It requires ongoing effort, real patience, and maybe most importantly, a deep commitment to being kind to yourself along the way, especially when it feels hard.
So here's a thought to leave you with. If the past is truly done, unchangeable, and carrying its weight only burdens you now in this moment, what new possibilities, what lightness, what kind of freedom might open up for you when you consciously choose to set that burden down, even just a little bit?
Yeah. And maybe think about it this way. Self-forgiveness is ultimately about recognizing that the person who made those mistakes, who felt that pain back then, isn't fixed in time. That past you is not the entirety of who you are today, nor the person you're actively becoming. So the real question is, looking forward from right now, What actions, guided by the knowledge you have today and the compassion you can choose to cultivate, will you take now to build the self you genuinely want to be proud of?
Until next time.